Starting yesterday, September 2nd, 2025, effective immediately, if you live in Burkina Faso and you indulge in a homosexual lifestyle or what is now termed as same-sex relationship, you will be arrested, you will be prosecuted, and you will be jailed between 2 to 5 years. I repeat, if you live in Burkina Faso or you plan to live in Burkina Faso and you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community and you practice it there, you will be arrested because it's a criminal act in their amended constitution, and you will be imprisoned for up to 5 years. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the latest law passed by the Transitional Parliament of Burkina Faso. It was agreed on unanimously by all parliamentarians. Just so you know, this law is under the family code set of laws in the country. The ruling government of Burkina Faso isn't the type of government we currently have in most African countries. They are totally different. They are different and they mean business, ladies and gentlemen. You see, homosexuality in Burkina Faso prior to 2024 wasn't a crime according to their constitution and wasn't a major subject of discussion because it wasn't publicly practiced. But it became a subject needing attention when the rainbow flag of the LGBTQ plus community was raised by people in Burkina Faso, particularly on social media platforms. This was when people's attention was drawn to it, specifically people in leadership and religious positions in the country's attention were drawn to the fact that the constitution of Burkina Faso was silent on the practice of that particular lifestyle. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side you stand, the good captain was in charge of the nation's affairs. And so, in July of 2024, a draft law was immediately proposed to the Transitional Parliament for amendment. The draft law sought to criminalize homosexuality at all levels, whether in practice or propagation. And just yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, the law got passed and now in full effect. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Ibrahim Traore has signed it into law, making Burkina Faso a part of half of Africa's 54 nations that has criminalized the act. So far, almost every single country in the West, as predicted, is against the law. They call it as a hate law or human right violation law and anti-human law. They see themselves to be the repository of all knowledge and a moral standard to the world. They determine what is acceptable and what is not. So they say it's an abuse and that's how it's supposed to be. This is how they've been relevant in world politics and in social lives. Now, they see a new set of generation that isn't towing their lines. This is their problem. This is one of the reasons why they would want the man dead. The fact that he's able to make this kind of decision, irrespective of the level of international backlash, is insane. This tells of how Africa, ladies and gentlemen, has never been short of men with balls. However, these types of men usually don't get involved in politics until it's totally necessary. So every now and then, we get to experience the likes of such men like Traore. Traore is this generation's Kwame Nkrumah. Now, these are the situations to expect for the position Burkina Faso has taken. Pay attention to this. There will be diplomatic pressure where diplomatic cooperation will be reduced. There will be economic consequences where foreign aids will be cut, foreign direct investment and tourism will be hit, and possibly a restriction on trade will be introduced. NGOs and human rights groups will label the country as discriminatory, ladies and gentlemen, leading to protests, campaigns, and boycotts abroad. They will receive even worse negative media coverage where they will manipulate international opinions against Burkina Faso, ladies and gentlemen. In some instances, if Burkina Faso has ratified treaties like International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, their banning of same-sex marriage will put them in violation of international human rights law, ladies and gentlemen. All these situations are bound to happen. But if when Burkina Faso is able to stand its ground and not budge, for their decision. These could be some of the advantages to them in the coming years. They will protect their culture. They will protect their population and their identity for those men who are here now and for the future unborn generations. Ladies and gentlemen, they will eventually find support and solidarity among conservatives and religiously aligned countries in the world. They will eventually create new alliances and forge an alternative means of survival. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing I have made peace with is this in this world. When you do the right thing, there will be people who will oppose it. When you do what is not right, there will be people who will still oppose it. Whichever direction you choose in life, you risk offending someone or some group. But that is what the human experience is all about, ladies and gentlemen. You must understand that you risk offending someone anytime you make a speech or a decision on anything in life. Therefore, you better choose offending people by choosing to speak or make a decision, or you might as well keep mute. Ladies and gentlemen, the African culture has from the beginning been built on a heterosexual base where there is a man and a woman, or in some cases, women in a committed sexual relationship, out of which children are born to form an expanding family. This has been the standard for our survival and continuity for our generations, ladies and gentlemen. This is tried and tested and need no replacement. We have bigger fishes to fry on this continent. And if the West really cared about the overall state of Africa and not doing this with an ulterior motive to achieve an outcome they wish for, they should care to get involved with our lack of clean water and malaria crisis and drought problems, ladies and gentlemen. If it is about human rights that they care about, then it should be about the rights of all humans pertaining to all subjects. For some reason, they always have the funding and resources to follow up on countries that are banning LGBTQ plus communities, but don't have the same energy to stop the wars they are funding around the world. The hypocrisy of the West sometimes is just silly when you think a little deeper about it, ladies and gentlemen. Burkina Faso is for the Burkinabes. They decide what's good for them and what's not in accordance with their constitution and way of life. You have to respect that. My own country, Ghana, ladies and gentlemen, since last year when Parliament passed the Human Sexual Rights and Family Values Bill, commonly referred to as the anti-LGBTQ bill, which fundamentally criminalizes same-sex relationships, identifying as LGBTQ plus and promoting LGBTQ activities, the president has since then been silent as though it didn't exist. Ladies and gentlemen, this should distinguish the difference between Captain Traore and Ghana's president to you. He is a man on a mission, I'm referring to Captain Traore, and ready to do whatever it takes to realize it. These are the types of leaders we need in Africa. Fearless and upright leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, if Africa will improve, it will take one great leader at a time in every one of these African countries. This time is Burkina Faso. Perhaps tomorrow it will be in Nigeria. This train cannot stop until we have upright men with balls in position of power in Africa. This is my dream, and I pray it becomes a reality in my lifetime. God bless the Captain Ibrahim Traore and the people of Burkina Faso who are in support of this cause. And thank you for taking the time